Hello, this is Kristan Weisdack, CEO and founder of BehaviorWorx of Southwestern PA, and thank you for joining us right here for another episode of Work Through It Wednesday. Today we're going to be talking about how some kids with autism or developmental delays have trouble communicating their wants and needs, so they may resort to biting, hitting, spitting. There's a whole number of behaviors that I've seen over the last 17 years that not just kids, but some people that are older with developmental delays, some behaviors that they use to communicate. So every behavior is communication. Just remember that. So today we're going to look at how to understand when a behavior is attention seeking, but really working on modifying that behavior so that the child or person doesn't have to spit or hit or kick or whatever that might be, that we can help take communication through sign language and talk about some of the skills that are needed and some of the preparation that is good to have going into using sign language. So now as we start every video, hopefully you've already subscribed to our email list. And so you can download this 4-quadrant sheet, the attention, escape, avoidance, gain, tangible, and self-stimulatory. We're going to go over that just like we do in every video. And then the second sheet of that behavior, and I already have this filled out for us, but the second sheet is really that antecedent behavior and consequence column. What's happening now and what do I want to have happen? And so as we look at the attention, escape, avoidance, gain, tangible, and self-stimulatory, what I want you to do, and this is just a recap. If you've joined us before and you know what's going to happen, that's okay. But it's good to practice this. So whether you're a teacher in the classroom or if you're a daycare teacher or you're working in early intervention, it's good to practice going through this because then you can do this on the spot when you're working with kiddos and understand the function of their behavior, even if this scenario doesn't apply to you. It's just really good practice to work through those things. So as you look at that 4-quadrant sheet that has the attention, escape, avoidance, gain, tangible, and self-stimulatory, to help understand the antecedent and the consequence, just what happens before the behavior and what happens after the behavior. And I do talk about this in all my trainings. Right under attention, you're going to write, no attention was given. Right? And that really helps us understand what was happening right before that behavior. And you can use a great process of elimination to understand this moving forward. So under attention, like I said, write no attention was given. And then escape, avoidance, you're going to write a demand was presented. So under attention, we have no attention was given. Under escape, avoidance, you're going to write a demand was presented. And then gain, tangible is pretty self-explanatory, right? They were trying to get a toy or a food from you or maybe a peer, right? So gain, tangible. And then self-stimulatory is need to self-regulate, right? And I always say this is kind of like too much or too little energy. So you yourself know that what this is kind of like. If you've ever been in a meeting and you're bored, you might be tapping your pencil or you might be shaking your leg, right? That heightens your state of arousal so that you can focus and attend to what's going on around you. So those are self-stimulatory behaviors. Some people use those to calm down and some use them to pick up their level of energy just so that they can maintain focus on their environment around them. So everything that you've just written on the front, the no attention was given, circle that, circle demand was presented, circle gain tangible, and then circle need to self-regulate, too much or too little energy. Now, the beautiful thing is these worksheets go hand in hand. So everything that you've circled on the front and everything at the bottom of that 4-quadrant sheet, the food, oxygen, water, sleep, activity, pain, and temperature, you'll want to circle that. Those are all things that you need to consider that affect behavior for these kiddos. So whether they have had breakfast yet, or have they had enough water, or have they had enough opportunities for movement in the classroom or whatever environment that you're in. So consider all of those things as you're looking at behavior. The beautiful thing is everything that you've just circled is an antecedent, but it's also most likely the consequence, right? It's why they did it, but what they're also getting out of it. So there's usually a match between antecedent and consequence whenever this behavior continues to occur over and over again, whether it's the good behavior or the bad behavior. So the behavior we're going to focus today is hitting, right? So you can do a little process of elimination when you're looking at hitting behaviors. One of the kids that I was working with this week, they were hitting, but it was only when mom was taking a phone call. Now, we've talked a little bit about this before, but specifically today, I want to talk about modifying the behavior itself using sign language. As we've gone through the videos, we've talked about how to modify what happens before the behavior, modifying the behavior itself, and then modifying the consequence. So today, imagine that you fill in that middle column with hitting. The antecedent was that there's no attention given, right? We can use that process of elimination, like I said, to rule out everything else. That in this situation, demand wasn't presented. They weren't trying to get anything from mom or dad that took the phone call, and they really weren't trying to regulate. But some of this attention-seeking behavior you can see because the child will smile, they'll make contact with the caregiver, they may even laugh, and you can see that it's kind of a game to them, right? So as we fill out that ABC chart, that's what is happening now, right? Always start with that behavior. So that behavior itself is hitting. Now, looking at what happened before that, that antecedent process of elimination, right? We ruled out everything else to get down to no attention was given. So what's happening right now, no attention is being given as the antecedent. In the behavior column, we have the hit, and the consequence usually matches that antecedent, right? They're getting attention for that behavior right now. So we have to find a way to break that cycle. So now as we look at modifying that behavior, so what you're going to do, the antecedent is still no attention. Let's say that mom gets another phone call, and now that behavior is that skill that we want to enhance. Sometimes it's a skill deficit, and sometimes there's other problems that get in the way that confound the situation and make it a little bit more difficult. But now we're looking at the behavior of using sign language to communicate. Now, it's important that when you're working with a team, everybody's on the same page, whether the child is using an adaptive communication device, an AAC, if they're using PECs. But today we're going to specifically focus on sign language and ways to make it a little bit easier. So you're going to write antecedent. Well, so this is what do I want to have happen? No attention. The behavior itself, you want them to be able to sign, and they'll get attention for that modified behavior. So things that you can work on when you start out with sign language. Now, some families can get kind of overwhelmed when we say, let's work on sign language to help facilitate communication until the language comes. And so it's really nothing to get overwhelmed about. There's a lot of great YouTube videos and apps that help you with sign language. And think about, you're going to be learning sign language right along with your toddler or the person that you're working with, right? So you don't have to have a wide variety of signs. And so just starting out, the basics that I like to work on with the kids are eat, right? It's just like you're putting food in your mouth, drink. And I don't expect them to turn their wrists, especially at a young age. So at least they're putting their hand up to their mouth, eat, drink, and all done. As the child begins to show that they're really getting used to signing for things, I always like to throw in a favorite. So like today we were working with one of my kids. He just turned 2, and we were working on the sign for blanket. And what I always do when you're working on that sign with your child, show that they're about to get reinforcement for that sign. So have that thing ready immediately so that as soon as they sign, or you help them sign, or you model that sign for them, that they will immediately get that reinforcer. So what we were doing is we were working on the sign for blanket because he wanted to lay and swing in the blanket, right? So we laid him in the blanket. We modeled the sign for blanket, helped him model the sign for blanket, and then we began to swing him back and forth because we're working on some movement exercises with him as well. So again, making sure that you're immediately reinforcing that sign, whether their favorite thing is a ball, right? Ball, 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 and then immediately handing them that object. If you're working on the sign for eat, 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 making sure that as soon as they sign, you reinforce them. Because what happens is you have to pair what we call in behaviorism the stimulus with the response, right? So making sure that as soon as they sign, eat, that they don't cry afterwards, that if they go, and then they go, ah, and then they get the food, they're going to pair that scream with getting the food. And you want to make sure you're breaking that cycle, right? So eat, and then you deliver the food right away. And so this is one way to help little by little the kids that you work with work on building up the communication through sign language to work as a replacement behavior. Now, what you want to make sure of is that if a child is just starting out with sign language, practice signs that are important to them and that you can practice a lot throughout the day. That's why, like, you're practicing eat, drink, and all done, because at a young age, they eat 3 to 5 times a day and they drink a lot throughout the day, and they want to get in and out of that high chair or their car. And things are happening throughout the day when you get to really practice those things. So make sure it's relevant to that child and make sure you're able to immediately reinforce their attempts. So this is just a great way to map out that antecedent behavior consequence and addressing that skill for enhanced communication, to make sure that they're not hitting or spitting or kicking for attention, that they're using communication. Because then we can work on using planned ignoring for the previous behavior. We're shutting that off. And then we really reinforce that use of, if they're starting to make sounds, we can copy those. Or if they're starting to sign, we can praise and reinforce those in very specific ways. So this is something that was really relevant to me this week, because a lot of the kids that we're working with are really starting to communicate in different ways, starting to babble more, some of the new clients that I have. And it's just really, really fun to see and to work with families, especially when you get that first sign, right? I was working with a kiddo on the iPad, and we bring that out every once in a while just to reinforce and wrap up our sessions sometimes. But I was helping him, and we play this bubble pop game, and I was showing him the sign for help. And all of a sudden, he brought his hands together and he signed for help. And so it was a really great moment when your child that didn't have any communication before, that's kind of whining and crying, has their first opportunity to communicate with you. It really helps decrease frustration for the child. It decreases frustration for the parent. And then you get to bridge that gap. And it's really great to be a part of it. I love my work, and hopefully I'll be able to continue it for many, many, many years. So I hope that you enjoyed this Work Through It Wednesday. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our email newsletter, because what we're going to be doing is having more courses available online. So whether you're working in early intervention or if you're a care provider, we are now a PQAS certified trainer. And so our courses, hopefully at the beginning of the year, will be live and available for you to access on demand. And so our team is going to be working on that into January. And then we'll make the big announcement on our Facebook, on our Instagram, and all of our channels as well. So we hope you enjoyed this Work Through It Wednesday. If you have your own question to submit about a behavior that you're seeing, please email it to us so we can help you work through it next Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern. That question can be submitted to behaviorworxpa@gmail.com. That's behaviorworxpa@gmail.com. And the more information that you can provide, the better. Whether it is you're telling me about the behavior itself, the time of day it's happening, who it's happening with. Of course, we don't want any personal information, right? But trying to provide as much context to the situation will really be beneficial for us. So join us right here next week at 7 p.m. for another Work Through It Wednesday. And Merry Christmas from our team to yours. And we will see you back here next week. Take care.